Coming at you all the way from Arbitrum, it's the Magic Hour Podcast.
This is Alan.
Dionysus.
And Braiker. Produced by Digital Strategies Guild. All right, listeners, we have a wonderful guest for you this week. We have Myst, the lead developer for the project called Arcane, a new project that's already minting on Arbitrum, and they are expecting to integrate with Magic. And we'll get into that in a second. But first, Myst, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, for sure. There's so many different projects out there, which actually gets me excited about the Magic ecosystem, because I think that, if we have so many people building within this ecosystem, then there's definitely going to be a lot of interest in it and a lot of activity just by the nature of having all these different projects. So,
so you guys must be very busy with all the projects that are going on right now in the Magic ecosystem.
Somewhat. I mean, there's such a large list, and, sometimes we reach out to different projects to see if they want to come on the pod and talk about their project. And at first they're like, yeah. And then they're like, you know what, we're still developing. We want to come on when we actually have something to launch, or, something we want to talk about. And that's okay. I understand that. So, there have been a couple of times where we were all set up to have someone, and then last minute they ended. So we have to kind of move in a different direction, but that's okay. We live with that kind of thing. We're flexible. But obviously Arcane is kind of getting to that stage, and I know that you guys are already minting your NFTs right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you, Myst, yourself, how did you discover crypto Web3? What drew you into it?
Yeah, and how did I end up in this corner of the internet?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, it's I'm not here since such a long time in the space compared to others. I've been here for like a year and a half now. Mm-hmm. I just, like everybody else, bought some Bitcoin. My friend was like, you got to buy some Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. That was like around Christmas 2020. And to give you a little bit background on me, I'm actually a game developer by trade. I've been building games for the past 5-6 years in Unity, and worked in a small studio here in London, which makes mobile games. So kind of hyper casual mobile games, or things like Candy Crush, that kind of apps. So I've been for a long time in the game development, but the Web3 world was very, very unknown to me. But after a while, like I just, the curiosity started to kick in, and I was like, damn, this is actually pretty interesting tech. And I was contacted by some guys on Solana in the beginning, who wanted to have like a small SDK to show that we could use Solana for in-game transactions, and the fact that the chain was pretty fast and the transaction fees were very low. So me and two other guys, we built like this kind of proof of concept on Solana. It was very early last year. One of the first games that was using the chain through Unity. And so that was kind of like my intro to the space. But after a while, like the community on Solana is kind of different to the community on Ethereum. So I was obviously more drawn to the Ethereum side of things, and all the good projects, I mean, the best projects to me in terms of culture, they were happening there. So I started to pack my bags and moved to another place in the metaverse. And I met some guys at Temple DAO. I don't know if you know Temple DAO. We did some metaverse stuff, like basically some quests integrated inside the crypto voxels, which is kind of a 3D space where we could build some enigmas and quests for players, for people to be able to participate into the protocol and to invest. That was a kind of a seed round, but trying to shut the whales off. So if you wanted to invest, you had to partake in the quest and stuff. So that was like super fun. And then after that, Treasure DAO happened. I mean, I came into it super late, into Arbitrum and Treasure DAO, but I always remember reading the white paper of Treasure. And I mean, maybe we can chat about this a little bit later as well, but like, everybody's talking about the metaverse, and everybody's trying to think what the metaverse would look like. And you see these ridiculous, Facebook-like 3D spaces where everybody's hanging out, and they think that the metaverse is literally a second life, or like is one place. But yeah, I was always thinking that the metaverse was going to look more like the internet. Basically, this super messy, construction of things that just fit together and that represents that mirrors the real world. All of us, we have different backgrounds, different needs. We just create this huge mass of projects together. And the approach of Treasure was not only super innovative, there's nothing else like it that I've seen before. It also made a lot of sense.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And, you covered a lot of things, so I kind of want to touch on them. But yeah, Treasure and the Magic ecosystem definitely is unique to this area of Web3. I like that you are a game developer for a very long time. I think that that's really important because one of the things that we were discussing with Garp from the Treasure DAO team was, there's a lot of people in Web3 want to build games and stuff like that, but
and they improvise themselves as game developers.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. And they don't have all the tools. They may not understand all the ancillary type of roles that they might need to help build this level of game, the marketing piece, et cetera. So hearing that you are already a game developer coming into Web3 and saying, hey, I can apply what I already know into this space makes me think that you might have something on your hands. Whereas some other projects where we've spoken to some people, I'm just, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be fun. Because that,
yeah, I mean, it's very interesting.
It's got to be fun, right?
It's super interesting what you're saying, because there's like making games is not only making like a 3D environment or like making models. It's actually such a deep topic. I mean, making games should be fun, but it's also very deep because there's like the philosophical part of games, right? What is a game? It's this kind of thing you interact with very simple rules, and there's so many different types of games, And people who improvise themselves as game devs, it's not that they cannot do it; they can do it, but it takes a long time to you have to go deep into the principles of game design, just to understand how what they're looking for, the different types of players, and what makes a good experience. Because it's super tricky to make actual games, and when I was working in the mobile industry, it's an extremely competitive environment, especially on the iOS front. These mobile apps. Basically, you're fighting for KPIs, for metrics, for retention. So you're making games, and then you're putting them out there, and you're checking like every day your metrics. So you have day 1 retention to day 7, day 30, and you have to keep people engaged for as long as possible. So that's one of the reasons why I left as well, because it's a little bit. It was not morally great to be doing those games, because we're just trying to basically like squeeze dopamine out of people and try to keep them engaged as long as possible, spending
microtransactions.
Exactly.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, I play my fair share of mobile games, and right now the one that I play the most is Hearthstone. But what is, I guess, your favorite type of game genre? Because I would imagine, being a game developer, you probably have a gaming kind of history, right?
To play, it's a difficult question. I love so many things, but the more I grow old, unfortunately, the more it becomes like strategy games, or I don't know, unique experiences. Sometimes I could play like a game like The Forest. I don't know if you heard about this one. It's like this 1 to 4 player game where like you're in the middle of an island, crash with a plane, and it's kind of like this survival horror thing with a story. That's amazing. But also I could play things like I don't know if you know Factorio.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Factorio. I've never heard of The Forest, but
it's like this super unique strategy games where you're surviving, and also like. Well, like maybe that's something we'll discuss after as well from my game design approach. But what I love is really giving people the choices and having consequences with these choices, and that's something that's a big problem with blockchain games at the moment. The questing sometimes is pretty bare bone, and
it's yield farming with extra steps.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that it's not interesting. It is very interesting to me for other reasons. But it's true that this is the challenge here. I mean, at least for me, it's a challenge coming here, especially in the EVM, in the Ethereum virtual machine, which is very limited in terms of computation compared to engines that I was working with. Trying to squeeze the life out of this thing, that's an interesting challenge.
I like what you said about, giving people a choice that has consequences, right? I used to play this game called Oxygen Not Included, which is kind of like a survival game too. Might be a little like Factorio-like as well. But you had these humanoids who were stuck on an asteroid, and you had to keep them alive, right? And everything you did to keep them alive would have an effect on the habitat that they were living in,
Yeah.
either negatively or positively or both, right? So you would build like a oxygen producer, but it would potentially create a lot of carbon dioxide. So you had to figure out a way, a solution, how to get rid of the carbon dioxide, which would then lead to another issue. You know, like
Yeah.
and what I loved about that game, and we'll get to and I think we'll move on after this, but what I loved about that game, which again you touched on, is that it really made you think about how are you going to approach this situation, what's going to happen when you do it, and prepare for those scenarios. And so how are you going to prepare for those scenarios as well before you even take that first step kind of thing?
Yeah.
It
It's
really
consequences planning, and at the end of the day, it comes at the complexity of the system, because you need a little bit of complexity for people to have to make those choices, and for you as a game designer to propose different outcomes, and for the choices down the line to reflect on the player experience.
right. And I think that also it's a delicate balance between how much information do you give the player and how much do you want them to kind of figure out on their own too, right?
Yeah. So we cannot have. I mean, it's extremely difficult to achieve. To have some hidden information on chain. There's some ways to do it, but it's not something that's very practical at the moment, for sure.
You've created this project called Arcane, and you're also working on Realm. Before we get into Arcane, can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved with Realm and how it relates to Arcane, or would you prefer that we talk about Arcane first and then talk
No,
about Realm?
that's fine. I'm happy to talk about Realm. It's actually, I mean, Realm is an amazing project. I've stumbled upon it, I think around Christmas or something, and then I started. It was before the big explosion of success. It was still like a couple of us in the Discord, and I don't know. I just started chatting with Jonah, and he seemed like to have to be set on a very clear mission and something very beneficial to the ecosystem. So yeah, I learned a lot from him, and also his approach of realms was very, I mean, to me, maybe he would not interpret it like this, but like I love the fact that it was very paper based. And I mean by that you had just those three biomes inside the realms, like plain, glacier, and whatever. And it was really like leaving it to the imagination. And that's something in games that I love that is very underutilized, is that people always have to describe everything visually, but back in the days when you used to play games that didn't have a lot of visuals, or even when you're reading a book, you have to imagine things in your head, and then it becomes much more personal,
I'm in alignment there. I think that imagination is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
And actually, that's one of the things that really kind of got me excited about Treasure is the bags and even like loot where treasure spawned from. It was just text on a screen. And
it was genius. It was exactly the same concept, yeah.
And I think it also presents this kind of perfect example of what the metaverse means, because loot and treasure in the real world is just text on a screen, but in the metaverse it can be your bag of treasures that you can pull out in this realm you're in, or
exactly.
And so all of a sudden
it's part of the shared it's part of the shared imagination, and if it means something between you and me, for example, maybe it means something between two other guys, and that's the real interoperability here. Is with basic building blocks like this. So Realm came in with a great building block that wasn't present at the time in the ecosystem, with geo features, biomes, which I'm super happy to use in Arcane down the line. And I hope other projects will be super stoked about using it as well.
Great. So your goal is to integrate not just realms, but I would imagine magic and treasure along.
Exactly. With it. That's the numero uno. It would be of course, to the starting point of the project. There's two things that I'm trying to do with Arcane. One is to see how far I can push the limits of on-chain questing and trying to create that granularity in the event system for the players, so the experience is kind of amplified a little bit. And the second thing is really to help treasure and the ecosystem however I can, and that means creating magic locks, using the treasures, maybe looking. I feel more like I'm in a research lab and I'm just digging for mechanics, which could be beneficial to them, just like as not only as a thank you for what they built, but also like wanting to participate. And yeah, it's just such a good environment right now, especially with the bear market that we're entering. It's such a great environment that, I feel compelled to do something about it. And I even like reduced my day job hours a lot to focus on this. So yeah, a lot of commitment there.
Oh, so you still have a real job?
Yeah, I'm that almost now non-existent for a couple of reasons that I'll mention a bit later. But yeah, I'm making the move now. It's to I sold my soul to the devil, and I'm here with you guys.
Hey, that's all right. If you can make it happen, then more power to you. I think that's really what this is all about.
Yeah, we're much more happy here than in an office doing Candy Crush type of stuff.
Hey, I understand that and I respect it. And for me, at least, what I love about Web3 is it's a new paradigm. It's not something that we ever really kind of had before, in terms of this trustless ledger that will run in perpetuity forever, because that's what we built.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested to see what type of effect this has, not just in the gaming space or the art space, but in society as a whole. And so that's why I'm really thrilled about this kind of stuff. But I'm digressing. We're here.
It's actually you're on point there, and also because that's something like also we're having a big reckoning right now in the market. A lot of projects have died. A lot of projects will die, unfortunately. But it's also normal because this crypto thing, this blockchain thing right now, it's like this huge laboratory. We think that, people think they're investing in tomorrow's Apple or Amazon when they buy stuff, but it's not the case. It's still such a research lab, and things get born and they die and we experiment and this works, this doesn't work. We had the OHM fork times before Christmas, they all died. It's kind of perpetual experiment. So at least
was Temple DAO supposed to be an
it was
yeah,
exactly.
Now I'm remembering.
We got we were kind of like a very toned down OHM4 because our yield was very, very low.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's a very different place because Temple DAO, I mean, we can talk about that later if you want, but Temple DAO is more like a novel type of organization where actually like people are working a lot in the background. There's a huge team creating products which are going to come out very soon. So yeah, it's a different story, but just to say that things, they die and people get very attached to protocols, but all of this is very experimental. So if you take the different approach to create your own world and some kind of IP that you can use as a sandbox, and you always try to create new value, and you'll keep on experimenting, you'll keep on bringing the project forward. And it doesn't have to have like a single form, it could evolve throughout the months. That's the key to survival, I think.
I agree. And I think that innovation is going to lead the way for any of the projects in the space. And you're right, some projects will die and we just have to accept that you can't get attached to it. We're basically experimenting every single day. Let's talk about Arcane. From what I understand, it's a kind of like an RPG style game, but can you give me your elevator pitch, your broad stroke description of the game and how you expect people will play it?
So Arcane is a fully on-chain adventure game, an RPG game that really takes roots in the old school RPG. I wanted to make an adventure for people in a specific world, the world of Yidrim, which some people might have read the story that is on the website about how it came to be and how it ended up not too far away from Bridge World. So like there's also that idea of trying to connect myself in a permissionless way, mentally connect the project in a permissionless manner to the magic ecosystem somehow, to be existing, even if I'm existing in a small corner, far away, at least, trying to be around. And people mint those wizards, and it's your character, and then you start building your character with skill points, and you go on quests. I'll talk a little bit about the questing system later. You gather obviously items that you can equip on your character to boost your stats. There's professions. Again, like we come back to this idea where a lot of people they start crypto games and they think like it has to be a AAA game with super amazing graphics, like a shooter, and just replace the soft currency with the token. But in the end of the day, people, they don't care about that. It's the same. Like if they have their soft currency on the server somewhere or on chain, it doesn't really make a difference for them. What's much more interesting to me is the interoperability and composability aspect of it, and something that TreasureDAO understood very well. And my goal is really to kickstart a small ecosystem, a small economy, of exchange between players who are going to make their own journey. They're going to make their own quest, and down the line, they'll go to a certain level and they'll get the chance to open their own storefront and with their profession to provide a certain type of very rare items that only a few of them can craft to other people in the community. And yeah, trying to get that organic, basically like an organic movement from the free flow of assets. That would be the main interest for me.
Okay, so the community is going to start their own kind of marketplace utilizing treasures and legions and smalls to create, like you said, these ultra rare NFTs that they can sell to others, or will they be able to use them? Are they weapons? Are they armor?
Exactly. And my main goal is obviously to be featured on the treasure marketplace, because then the fees would go back to them. And there's a lot of items to be traded in the game. I mean, there's a lot of items to be looted just in terms of gear that's looted in the first phase. Now there's 450 different gear pieces that you can loot, and so I didn't make them all by hand. I built like an algorithm to generate some of them, because otherwise I didn't mention, but actually I'm working alone on this, so I have to have like a certain approach to things where it's kind of like the smallest denominator to get things done, because and that plays very well into the hand of leaving a lot of stuff to imagination, because you have to use that to your advantage, not to have to build everything, because video games take a really long time to make.
Absolutely. Listen, I'm not a game developer, but I understand that good things take time for sure. And, for you to be doing it all by yourself, I'm sure it's a lot of work, but I like what you said about using the smallest common denominator, because it sounds like you're building for scale at that point, because
Exactly.
and future-proofing these smart contracts so that when you want to build bigger or add in, you've already kind of laid the groundwork. Correct?
Exactly. You said it perfectly. This is the composability. It should not only be, in my view, between you and other projects. It should also be inside your own project. So I've built, for example, the wizards, the NFTs that you're minting right now. They got loads of stats, and they got the classes. Some are already used by the game, but some are not yet, like the affinities. I just put them in there. And also the character traits, I just put them in there to give life to the NFT. But these 2-3 traits, they're not used yet. I don't know yet how I'm going to use them, but I know I'm going to use them, or maybe another project will use them. You see, it's just like bringing this all this data, as much data as possible on chain, and then creating this huge pool of assets and storyline. So people, my dream is really to create like this system where there's going to be organic organization and corporation around it, which again TreasureDAO did in a wonderful way. When I see guilds competing to put their hands or putting their funds together to put their hands on the 101s or very rare NFTs to boost their yield, it's like, this is exactly to me what blockchain gaming should be about. These assets that are going around, and communities organize themselves, stories happen. Anyway, so yeah, these are important tools.
I definitely agree. And, I think we're still at the very early stages of where this stuff is going to be going. But you're right. It's a very unique proposition to have everybody working together to maximize whatever yields they might earn, or rather than competing against one another, everybody's coming together to play the game better, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, they could compete with each other, but what I mean is that from a player decision point of view, there's actually a lot of player decision in what to do with the asset. Imagine, I don't know, like there's two guilds competing for something, and then one of the guy in one of the guilds is like infiltrated that guild, and he gets his hand on one of the assets and sends it to the other guild. There's a theft here, but a healthy theft for the game. Just the story unfolds itself through these assets. Yeah.
I think about that often. We just recently did a pod with this gentleman, Noah, from City Clash. And that was one of the things that we were talking about was, you're competing against others. And what happens if you buy a city on a marketplace and add it to your faction, but it was part of another faction already, like that kind of thing. Yes, there's going to be quote unquote bad actors, but not the type of bad actor that's going to ruin the ecosystem, more like someone who's just role playing a different type of character than what people are expecting. Obviously, I went on to your website, arcanemagic.net. I minted myself a wizard. Obviously, there are a bunch of different characteristics and attributes and that sort of thing. But, there are some other kind of options: home, adventure, inventory.
So
it's
I
clear that.
cannot share my screen during the podcast, unfortunately, right?
No. That's okay, though. What I was going to ask was, how far along are these other features? When do you anticipate, like the next iteration of the game to kind of be developed? Or are you waiting for the wizards to mint out first? What's your like roadmap?
Yeah, so I wanted to share my screen actually to show you guys some sneak peeks of the game actually, because I have them on my computer.
Well, you can share them with me, and I'll definitely try to describe them over audio.
No, but maybe I'll post some. Soon I will have to do a thread on Twitter anyways to show it to the world. The people in the Discord know it a little bit, but basically I'm reaching the point where like the release of Questing is imminent. I'm not waiting for the mint out, for the thing to mint out, like, because the project is super young now anyways, and this is not my goal, like, to wait for the mint to finish. I'm just building. My only strategy here is just to build relentlessly, until there's something cool that people enjoy, and then whatever happens. But yeah, it's imminent right now. So the front end of the game is actually a Unity build, which I do a little bit of front end, but I really suck at it. Like React apps is really not my forte. Like I struggled even to make the website. So in Unity, I feel more at home, and I do have a larger field of action. Like I can give like feedback to players on their actions in my opinion, in a more interesting way than React apps can at the moment. Maybe somebody who's extremely skilled in React development can do the same, but I don't have these skills. So this is actually done. And the contracts are done now. There's a huge batch of contracts, like 9 different contracts that are finished. That's why I took a long time this month to finish those, just to make sure that the questing system and adventure works. Accounting as well for equipables, for all the equipments, for the gear, also for perks, so like potions and stuff, things that you might take on with you on your journey. Account for the crafting. A lot of things are placeholders at the moment because this will come in phase 2, obviously. But I'd like people to start questing as soon as possible, and it's going to be in the next couple of days now. Now I need to just plug everything together and make sure that there's not like a horrendous bug, on the front end, and people can start their journey. I don't know if you've seen the map. There's because I do a lot of voting inside the server, and people can decide, on some aspects of the game, and they all voted for this specific zone to be the starting point of the game. So this is going to be the first zone is going to be released only in the beginning, so people are going to start questing there. And there's 2 differences in the questing compared to other projects. First of all, instead of being long quests, like you lock it for 12 hours or 24 hours, quests actually last 1 hour. But you have mana, and you're spending your mana to do the quest, and it recharges over time. The thing is that the more you're high level compared to a zone where you're questing in, the less mana is going to cost you to do that quest. So basically, when you progress through the games and you need to go and farm some items in the lower zone because you need something to craft, you can do a quicker quest, right, in one of the lower zones.
So rather than it taking an hour, so to speak, it might be like 10 minutes.
No, it will take you an hour, but then you can chain them because it will cost you less mana. Let's say you have 240 mana to start with.
Okay.
Instead of costing you like 100 mana, it's going to cost you 60 mana or something, And then you can cram more quests per day if you're questing in low level zone.
Got it. I understand. Well, I mean, on the website, I can see the map. I think down towards the bottom of the main web page.
Yeah.
I could see what the map looks like. It's funny, and don't take this the wrong way, but all these maps to me, they all look so similar to the Azeroth map.
Well, it's also a compliment. I would take that as a compliment because we grew up with this. Obviously, World of Warcraft is a huge influence on me, and I could talk about World of Warcraft for hours. The old version, obviously, because the newer versions of the games are totally not what was great about it in the first versions.
Right.
But yeah, it does have a huge influence on Azeroth, Kalimdor, Eastern Kingdom. It's just, yeah, we grew up with this.
It makes sense, and I feel like I would be the same way. I mean, I talked about this on previous podcast episodes, but I've been playing Elden Ring, and it's the same thing too. Like the map just
Yeah.
reminds me of that first time I played World of Warcraft, and I played EverQuest even before World of Warcraft, but
Yeah,
the World
a
of
lot of
Warcraft map.
nothing is created, everything transforms, as they say.
Yes, you're right.
Even
Right.
even for the nomenclature of words, the words we're using, it's very difficult because a lot of us in the Web3 space, in the Web3 gaming right now, we're using the same terms, right? It's a lot of guys in the space. Unfortunately, I wish there was more girls, but it's a lot of guys, and we all like the same things. We like to go on adventures and fight and get weapons and have characters or like chill in the space. And so we tend to use a lot of the same terms like guilds, For example, like in Realm DAO, Jonah had a great idea. He came up with the Builders Guild, which is the once you bought some of the structures and you lock some magics, you access the Builders Guild. And in Arcane's Discord, like 2 weeks later or something, I was like, they have the mage roles, the one who minted the mage. It would be nice to have something that's a little bit more community like, So I was like, what? It's a mage. It's actually a mage guild, like they're kind of, they're the mage group, they're a mage guild. And then the day after I woke up, I was like, yo, wait, actually, like the, Realms thing is called Builders Guild. He's going to think that I just outright copied it. But then you cannot go into that direction because then, we all take the same terms and sometimes it's just what it is. It's like this fantasy universe and some things stay the same. A bit like the World of Warcraft maps.
Oh no, you're 100% right, and I think, and again, you said a lot of different things, and I want to touch on a lot of them. But first off, I don't feel like anybody's copying anybody because one of the points of Web3 is the composability aspect. Someone writes a contract, you can just integrate that contract into yours very simply, right? You just write the contract X as Y, right? And I think that if someone creates a certain contract that makes things easier or is smart or developed in a very gas efficient way, why wouldn't you use that? Why wouldn't you take that kind of option and just kind of apply it to yours? I don't think that there's any problems with that. And I think that anybody getting into this space is aware of that when they're doing this and be accepting of that fact. I can't see how they wouldn't be. You can't.
Yeah, you can interact with it if they have an exposed function that you can interact with, but otherwise you could just fork the code. It's very open. It's very open. But just to mention, there's this shared space of imagination that we're cultivating since the beginnings of table RPGs. That just dwarves, elves, things like that, they stick around.
Oh yeah. There's definitely a encyclopedia, if you will, and probably goes all the way back to Dungeons and Dragons, which is like from the 70s, and
I'm not that old, but yeah, I would love to try it once.
I'm not that old either, but Dungeons and Dragons is a very old game, obviously, because it's pen and paper. But the words that they use, the language that's used, it's still applicable today. You touched on another thing too about how there's a lack of females in this space. There are certainly a large number of females who are playing games and have audiences, and I watch some of them. I could go into like Hafu, Slissa. These are just some that I watch. But there's a ton of them. So the point is that
hopefully they bring more projects to the space. That'd be great.
Well, I agree too, but the thing is like, and this is what I find weird, and maybe there's something else going on behind the scenes that I'm not aware of, is there are a lot of streamers, and yet no streamers will even kind of broach the topic of NFTs, because in the gaming space, for like traditional gamers, there's a very kind of adverse reaction to NFTs.
It's a war.
Right. And
it's a war.
And it's also so surprising to me as someone who's in Web3 that understanding how great it is to own your own assets.
Yeah,
in these games
this is
is
super complicated
right.
because there's two factors in play, in my opinion. Here, first one is obviously people in 2022 are completely entrenched into their belief. So like they think something with the group, and then it is what it is, and then blah 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 blah. They cover their ears and they don't want to hear anything. And Twitter is like the catalyst of this. Like you see the conversations on Twitter between NFT people and non-NFT people. It's like two people not listening to each other, right?
Right.
And the second problem is that most of the time, 99% of the time, the people who are in the blockchain space, who are in front, instead of explaining things carefully from an angle that they can understand, they just reply like, I don't know, the NGMI,
Yeah.
or like a friend staying poor, and you're like, all right, well, this conversation went great.
Oh, and I agree with you, and I'm usually the one who's like, well, if you look at it from this perspective, it might be something that's beneficial to you. I'm not going to be like, you're not going to make it just because you're not interested in it. I just find it's so very interesting how like there is a complete lack of discussion around this type
Yeah.
of topic. And I will say though, there are a number of streamers that do cover it, and it's a very small minority, but
Because
one
they
that
make the jump. You have to make the initial
yeah,
jump. Everybody who makes the
right,
jump, they don't come back from it. So that means something, and that's why we know, you and I, that this thing isn't going anywhere. And like those people down the line, they'll change their mind. So
right.
it doesn't really matter as long as people one day we have like we have an interface that they can interact with in a nicer way than what we have today with with the private key, public key. It's still very user friendly. That's the main goal, really.
I agree with you there too. I think that we are really like in the DOS stages of Web3, if you will, to make an analogy to like a graphical user interface.
Yeah.
But I also think that the private key, public key thing is, if we can get our wallets to become our user access points, we can really do away with passwords and usernames altogether. If you
Yeah.
think about it.
So I'll tell you a little something about this in the end of the podcast if you're interested. But yeah.
I am interested. I'm enjoying this conversation. I feel like we are, we are aligned on a lot of similar topics.
Yeah, yeah, and it's critical topics too for us because it's what we like, right? We're not really here in this corner of the. You're not really on Arbitrum if you're really crazy about DeFi. I mean, there's some good protocols like DPX, whatever, but this is we're building something different here. I imagine.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that up because I was looking at your Twitter and I noticed that in your profile you had something called Starknet, which I think is a similar. It's like another L2 style blockchain, but it's using something called ZK Starks. Is that correct? Do I have that
Yeah,
right?
that's correct. And yeah, I'll be happy to tell you about this in the end if you want. That's what I meant with the account security.
Gotcha.
I'll
Yeah,
explain.
yeah. Well, we'll get to that. We're still sticking with Arcane here. So questing is coming out soon.
Yeah, the second sorry the second point I wanted to mention just about questing, other than the questing time, is that here I don't know if you can see if you're on the website. There's the two little gifs. One is with the map, and then on the right you can see where actually the questing takes part.
Yes.
And it's actually it plays out inside a multi-dimensional array on the contract. So meaning that you can move up and down. You're actually moving around a grid. So instead of like questing into the nether, you're actually moving around on the map. And what you're seeing is the first level, the first zone of the game on this little island. And as a wizard, when the questing starts, you can go anywhere you want. Like you can go and you'll have to do one quest on each tile, but throughout the time, you'll be able to explore the map. And all these tiles, some of them have very different type of events that arise. Some of them are very different types of loots. And so, yeah, there's like more interaction with the questing on that front.
Well, I can. Well, I was
Yeah.
going to say, in watching this GIF, I see that the loot that you receive kind of drops. Now, there's 5 items there. There's like some rings, a book, a knife, or a dagger, maybe, if you will. Are those choices, or do you get all of them? That's my first question.
Yeah, you get all of them. Yeah.
Okay. So then the second question I have is, if these are NFTs, and if they're not NFTs, that's okay.
Oh, they are.
Okay.
Everything is on chain.
Right. So if these are NFTs, how do you approach the challenge of, well, there's going to just be an endless supply of these things entering the ecosystem. How are we going to get rid of them? How are we going to?
This is where the crafting comes into play and the base building. There's not like a basic level of crafting. There's a lot of professions. There's actually 9 different professions.
Okay.
With all different types of things that you can build, and all of these professions require recipes, and some of them will require a lot of items, which means that higher level players will be buying the loots of lower level players, and so on, trying to satisfy this economy until the end. It's actually one of the things that I'll come to in the next phases, is trying to balance that out, because at the moment I didn't really have time to. I did some basic balancing, obviously, but it's really something that you have to fine tune. So that's why also in my contracts there's a lot of functions that allow me to fine tune down the line.
Right.
But yeah, there's 2 layers. There's the crafting, and then there's also the base building. You need supplies to build that base, build that house of yours, right? If you want to have cool stuff, things that allow you to progress in your profession, or maybe just like visual stuff that you collect, rare artifacts, it's all going to be in there, and it's all going to require you to burn a lot. So yeah, it's like I'm building, like, at the same time, a giant burning engine for to be able to sink, I hope, enough of this so the economy doesn't go banana.
That's great that you actually are thinking about that, because I feel like sometimes, again, these projects, people aren't thinking that far ahead, and it even comes back to what we were talking about before about actions cause consequences, right?
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that you're thinking about that and you have that in mind.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, right now I didn't talk with anybody in Treasure. I didn't even show the game to anybody, to be honest. I've been like kind of doing it in my corner, but hopefully sometime soon I will go towards them and say hello and just show them the game. Maybe they'll like it, I don't know, but it will be valuable for me to get at least some information from them who have much more experience on the economy side of things. So that would be super interesting for me. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Listen, you mentioned that you have 9 smart contracts. One of the questions that I do ask, or I want to ask more, is, are you having these contracts audited? Because I know that that's, something that's not important to everybody, but I think that as we continue to evolve in this space, that's going to be a very important piece for a lot of folks who want to get into these projects to ensure that, what they're accessing has been vetted, has been checked out. And I know that socially we can do that as well, right? Because if there's a vulnerability in a contract, someone's going to sniff it out eventually, right?
Yeah, like it happened with Treasure Marketplace.
Right, exactly. But at the same time, you don't want to wait and not know that vulnerability is present. You I think it is important, and I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm just sharing my opinion.
No, it's very interesting. It's good that you challenge me on this, especially because it's not something at all that I plan right now. Just because, again, since I'm alone, like my to-do list is giant. Every day I wake up, bam, bam, bam. I have to bring so much stuff, so the package is kind of complete, and the Unity build takes a lot of time as well, because it's a lot of different intricalities. And so yeah, I didn't have time to think about it yet at all, but it's definitely good advice, and it's definitely something that I'm going to start thinking about once the questing phase 1 is released.
Hey, absolutely, and I think that that's a good way to approach it. I think that as we move forward, and I'll get off my soapbox after this, but it's the people who are participating are they're going to become twofold. They're going to be savvier, and they're only going to be picking and choosing what they want to invest in from a kind of what's the lowest risk, even though I'm in this risky space to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is you're going to have people who have no idea what the risks are in Web3, but they're going to be like, if something happened, if it's straightforward, it's easy for them. But if there's something that causes them confusion, or they end up losing due to like a hack, it might turn them off for good.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's the plague of this space, huh?
Right. And so, those types of people are important to the space too, because if they just want to come in and play the game because they can and it's free and this, that, and the other thing, then they're going to do that, and they want to do that.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have to think about, whether there's a risk.
Definitely, they want to have the stamp of assurance. Be sure
Right,
that this is safe. And not only that, it's not even only for them. It's also for us, the devs. Like it's there's always a little thing that you forgot somewhere in a corner because you're so on like high level stuff, and at the same time low level stuff. You're doing everything, so it's kind of like
Right.
It's
right.
a welcome help.
It's almost as if the Treasure DAO should maybe develop a contract auditing arm to support.
Yeah, they'll have a lot of work on their hands, but yeah.
Well, no, I know they do, and I'm not saying that they should do that right now. But...
No, I mean like the arm that would be created, they would have a lot of work because there's so many projects right now. It
oh
seems
yeah,
they
absolutely. But that's just another method for utilizing Magic, right?
Yeah.
You pay for the audit in Magic, creates more demand for Magic, that sort of thing, and
yeah, it's a good idea.
Who knows? But I like, we're getting off on tangents, which I like to do anyways. But
it's Sunday.
So I got the questing. It looks pretty good. You said it's going to launch soon. I'm interested in playing it. I'm going to definitely check it out because I have one of these wizards, if you will. But what else can we expect from Arcane in the future? Or
So there's the long-term roadmap and the short-term roadmap. And the long-term roadmap, I cannot really give you an answer now because again it comes back to this thing of having this universe, and we're just going to keep going forward, whatever the space looks like in like 6 months. And I have no idea how the space is going to look like in 6 months because we saw it just now. Things, they live, they die, and you have to be reactive. The only thing that matters is that you're here and you keep on doing the right choices along the way and going where the value is for everybody in the community, where it, not only monetary value, also like social value, whatever you're looking for. So the long-term goal, I don't know, it's going to change, it's going to evolve, and it's going to grow. The short-term goal right now is to, when the questing is out, the adventure is out, people start to lose some stuff, I'm going to prepare the other zones and the crafting, and then the base building aspects. And this is where like the small brains and all the NFTs come into play. You'll have your small brain, you connect it, it becomes your companion, and he's the one that's going to stay at the base while your wizard is questing. And you'll be seeing his little pixel art going around and interacting with the different stuff that you have on your land, on your camp. He'll be building stuff, helping with the professions, etc. And then the third phase would be, I hope, it's my dream, I'll keep working towards that the Magic marketplace accept Arcane. If it doesn't, I told myself I'll just build a marketplace using Magic, and maybe I'll funnel the royalties straight to them somehow. I'll just do it in a permissionless way, and that's it, right?
I think that there's an opportunity for your potential marketplace to integrate right into Trove or the Treasure Marketplace, because it seems like they've done that with a lot of projects. Why they wouldn't. I
haven't talked with anybody yet. I don't know what the options are, so I cannot really answer you. This is like the thing that I told myself. If it doesn't work with them, I'll make my own, and I'll just funnel the royalties somehow to them. But this is really like the short-term goal, so people can go on to the adventure, see their base growing, exchange things, and ultimately have a social fabric that emerges around the game. And there will be some guilds. I cannot say much about that for now, but you will know more in the upcoming weeks. It's gonna be interesting.
Now, is Yidrum a single instance for everybody, or does everybody have their own version of Yidrum for their own questing purpose?
Everybody, it's a single instance, but this is something also I haven't decided yet if you're going to be able to see the other players. I can make it happen. It's in the works. Like there's something in the works, but it's not done yet, so I don't want to.
That's fine.
I don't want to show it now because it's but I've been thinking about that. Yeah.
Well, I just think about the community aspect and wanting to interact with other people. How does that? What does that look like?
Especially because one super important aspect of my questing system with the grid and the different tiles and their different types is that you can have specific type of events on different type of tiles, which means that if you're going towards a city and you stay on the city, you'll have access to actions which are only available inside the city. Mm-hmm. And that brings a lot of possibilities down the line with interaction between players.
I love that. All right, cool. So, it sounds like you have put a lot of thought into this, that you definitely have the right background to execute on this and develop something that people will find entertaining. I'm looking forward to questing. I think that
Yeah, me too. This is going to be fun, I hope.
yeah, I hope so too. I mean, I hope that all the projects that not only that I speak with, but all the projects within this ecosystem succeed, because that's just going to make Magic succeed at the end, right?
Yeah, well,
The
exactly.
idea that you can jump in and out of any one of these projects. One thing that I do want to
Yeah.
bring up to you, and this is more food for thought than anything else. It's
Mhm.
not. I'm not trying to say you should add this, or the partners that we work with, Digital Strategies Guild, one of their arms has developed this tool that automates Web3 transactions. Now, it's kind of in its infancy. One of the things that they've developed right now is like an automatic claiming mechanism for the Atlas Guild, right? So you have your Magic staking in the Atlas Guild,
Yeah.
you want to claim it. You could set up this automation tool to claim every day at, like, say, 6 a.m. in the morning, so to speak. Or you could do it multiple times in a day if that's what you want to do.
Is that a little bit like a Keeper DAO?
Yes. Yeah, a little bit like
Okay.
KeeperDAO. I think that it might be, you can almost call it a bot, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But my question to you is do you think that there's a place for that in something like Arcane, or even beyond that? Because to me, I think that this is a very valuable tool, because what I'm kind of realizing, or at least what I'm seeing right now, is that there is going to be a lot of activity that you're going to have to do within Web3 to participate in all these different projects. It's not
Yeah.
going to be like you're just going to do Arcane. You're not just going to do Arcane. You're going to do Arcane, and you're going to play Toadstools, and you're going to play Battlefly, and you're going to do Bridge World.
And you're
all
gonna
of a
end
sudden-
up doing 500 transactions a day.
Right. And that takes a lot of time. I mean, when I just go to execute just a couple transactions, it usually takes me like 10, 15 minutes to get it all done. You want to make sure you're doing this, you have the right funds, you're switching different layers, blah, 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 blah. So the more I think about this automation tool, the more I'm like, that's just going to be needed from a user experience perspective, right? Because then no one's going to want to do everything all the time. There are going to be things that you just want to keep playing or keep doing in on a repetitive basis, where you're like, do I have to keep doing this every day? No, I'll set up an automation kind of thing. So the reason I bring it up to you is, do you see something like that being beneficial to Arcane, or do you think that it could potentially take away from the experience, if you will?
No, it's actually it's a great point you're making, because it is a problem. The way we interact with the game is a problem with doing all these transactions, first of all, we're very lucky to be on Arbitrum, which fees are pretty low, but it is still a sizable, investment for some people. It's a couple of dollars a day. Like, it's still money for people, and it's something that you have to keep in mind. And also from the user experience, you're right. It's you're making all these, especially if you have a ledger like me, like, you're gonna have to click a million times.
My gosh.
It's a little bit daunting, but there are ways to do that. Maybe either using the automating system that you talked about. I'm very curious to hear about it, actually. Like, it sounds very interesting. Mm-hmm. Or do some smart design where you could keep on questing indefinitely, and just at the end you do the checkout, and we see on the time-based metric, like, how many quests did you do, and how much did you move on the board, how much loot are you eligible for, that kind of thing.
I think about it just popped in my head, but I think about, like, when I used to play StarCraft 2 or whatever, and you would have your SCV exploring the unrevealed map, and you would just control click all around the map, so they would go up to the right hand corner, and then it would go to the left hand corner, and then it would come down to the bottom left.
Yeah, that was a lifesaver.
Right. But I mean, I think about that type of interaction, or that type of experience, where, I'm going to do a whole bunch of quests today, so I'm going to go this place first, and then this one, and then this one, and this one, and this one, kind of thing. And maybe you set parameters where if you didn't have this result, then you can't go to the next one, or something like that. I mean, obviously, those are things that I'm just kind of fantasizing about, if you will. But
no, but it's a very legitimate concern, and especially because, I don't know, you kind of see the GIF now because you don't have it, but, like, in Arcane, you also have the full equipment thing. Like, it's like a Diablo style equipment thing where you have the slots again, or maybe World of Warcraft, very Blizzard inspired. And you're gonna have to equip when you get a new loot, bam, it's a transaction. So there's ways after to make it. You can set up your character however you want, and then you send in one transaction, batch, equip, unequip, and you do it all in one. But just design wise, you're right. It's something that that's going to be a little bit complicated to manage down the line.
Without a doubt. And I guess we'll see how people become aware of that, and how builders start to approach that particular feature of Web3. And,
already sorry, just to finish on that, already the Nitro upgrade of Arbitrum is going to be a godsend, I believe.
Okay, well, let's get into this L2 roll up Starks discussion in a second. But before we do, I just shoot, I was gonna say something, and you were talking about the Nitro thing.
The upgrade of Arbitrum.
Oh yeah, no. What I was gonna say was, you brought up having a ledger. When I go and I want to list like 20 NFTs on the marketplace to sell, whether it's Magic or on L1, it takes me like a good 15, 20 minutes, because first I gotta approve it, and then each one I gotta sign, and I gotta sign my ledger, and each
and you press right.
And God forbid they need to have the debug information on there. Then it's like, I'm pressing it like 100 times just to get one transaction done.
And trust me, you haven't used the secret network. The secret chain.
No, I'm not.
It's a chain that has privacy built in on Cosmos. It's a great chain actually, but on the ledger, I don't know why there's literally 30 pages for each transaction. It's a nightmare. You have to press like till the end of times. Anyways, it's ridiculous.
That's not going to work for anybody.
It's super annoying.
So let's talk about L2 briefly.
Yeah.
Obviously, like you said, you're interested. Well, first off, Magic is on Arbitrum, and you were talking to me about this Nitro, so to speak.
Yeah, next upgrade of the network.
Yeah. Tell me about that. I haven't heard about this Nitro. Now I want to look at
it. It's just actually I was in Amsterdam 3 weeks ago at the Dev Connect, like this big gathering, and it was loads of Ethereum conferences, but I went solely to go to the L2 conference, L2 Beat, where it was like all the L2s were here, and it was just like great, because right now this is where the energy is. The market looks grim. A lot of L1s have their own problem. I mean, you look at things like Phantom. Remember in December, everybody was like, yeah, it's going to be the year of Phantom and DeFi. There's so much TVL. Now it's in the gutter. Harmony with DFK, with DeFi Kingdom. DeFi Kingdom on its own, everybody was saying, yeah, it's going to be like the behemoth of blockchain gaming. So yeah,
they also had some other problems too, though, from what I understand, right? They had some, like developer funny business going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's of course it's complicated to get right, but just in general, the landscape looks a little bit bleak, but not in the L2 space right now. And it's really something that I was feeling at the conference, talking with everybody. And anyways, the Arbitrum guys were here and showed us the Nitro upgrade and everything. And basically, what it means for the end user is just going to be faster transaction and lower fees. Even lower fees. Some people are talking about sub-cents low fees. So like, I mean, let's see what happens. But it could be really like a really nice upgrade for the chain that is maybe the best L2 out there right now. Like Arbitrum is. People are using it. People are loving it.
Well, what I like about Arbitrum more than I like about any other chain right now, and granted, I haven't used Optimism, but I like that you can just transfer Ethereum, and then you're able to interact on the chain without having to get a native token. I think that's what makes sense to me. Like one time, I accidentally transferred something to the Phantom network, and I had not purchased any Phantom yet. And at that point, I couldn't do anything until I had some Phantom.
Yeah.
And so, it's like, how does someone think that this makes sense in a way where your stuff is stuck until you can figure out how to get some of the native token there?
There's a romantic side to it, because you're thinking about your assets like they're traveling through space between different places through bridges. It's very epic, right? But
Right.
it has this really weird downsides where it happened to all of us. We're stuck on the chain. We have no freaking native tokens, and we're like,
Right.
well, you're just DMing people like, please, can you send me one phantom?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
I'm lucky to be in a really large Discord. We talk about it on this podcast a lot.
So you
called
get
The
some
One.
buddies to
Oh
hook
yeah.
you up.
Well, it's a whole bunch of degens. They're all over the Web3 space, every nook and cranny. So you're bound to find someone in there who's going to help you out. And that's the other
Brothers in
thing
arms.
too. Right. And that's the other thing too. They're more than willing to help you out. Like I had some dude had asked me for some Matic one time, and I had asked to Discord, hey, does anybody have any Matic? And I sent him some. He almost sent me 3 Ethereum back because he thought I sent him Ethereum. But
Best community out there.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the way it is, and I think that's one of the things that I also like enjoy about it. But tell me,
And not only that, but so there's this upgrade to Arbitrum that is amazing. Then also a huge advantage for me is this proximity culturally with Ethereum, because we've seen last year was the year of L1s and everybody's competing for that, and you have this whole like Polkadot thing that nobody uses, or like Cardano or whatever. I don't even know what's happening there. But there's a future. There's one of the possible futures where actually all these L1 die, and just we find good ways to scale Ethereum, and the fact that we're using ETH as well on Arbitrum psychologically, I think has a lot for it, because it's kind of a better integrated system, and it just makes sense. It makes sense from a technical point of view, and then after later on we can talk about L3s if you want, but it makes a lot of sense on the scalability aspect.
I agree with you there for sure, because one of the things that I think I heard someone talking about, it might have been on a Kevin Rose podcast. He was talking with the developers from Polygon Network, or maybe it was on Bankless, but they were talking about how in the future they expect the Ethereum base layer, the L1, to be this kind of
the settlement layer,
right? The machine layer. No one's going to interact on Ethereum. Everything's going
just
to roll back.
A validation. You store the proofs over there,
Right. So tell me about, I guess, what you know about Starknet, because I don't know too much about Starknet and this layer 3. What is L3? Where where are we going here?
So L3 will come a little bit later, but basically, to me, Starknet is layer 2. It's layer 2 that uses different technology than Arbitrum. It's not a rollup.
Mm-hmm.
But it uses zero knowledge proofs, and it's a cryptographic way. It's very complicated. It's a cryptographic way to basically between, let's say we have two parties, and it's a way for me to verify that you're telling the truth, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. So it keeps things more secure and private, so to speak.
Not really private, but I wouldn't have to do. Private in the sense that I wouldn't have to. I don't know which calculations like you did together. I can just verify that you've been honest in your calculations. And what that means for the in compared to other chains, where like let's take Ethereum mainnet, where like all the nodes they're doing the same calculations in parallel, and they all validate and they look at each other and they're like, hey, we have the same results, right? And here the big difference is that you can have one single computer doing a certain set of calculations, and he'll get the proof, and then all the others can verify. We have the prover and the verifier, and all the verifier can verify that you were honest in your calculation, and the stuff gets validated. And that means that you could have, in theory, a super calculator, like a supercomputer, somewhere in the network that would take care of a lot of computation. And then just output a small proof that the verifiers can verify and validate it inside the network. So to me, Starknet is really the future. It's the next big leap into blockchain architecture and blockchain systems. It's a wonderful team. The network is extremely young, but they're building as they go along, and it's really an amazing space for the prospect of blockchain gamings, because basically you're not bound by the limitations of the EVM.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know, in Solidity, it's very complicated to make, granular calculations, to have a lot of divisions and all these divisions that basically they bring granularity, they bring life to a system. Especially in games, it's important to have loads of them. You have very simple computations on EVM, and on Starknet it's totally different. Like it's much more math orientated, and you can do crazy stuff on it.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you a couple of examples. There's these guys that work in the ecosystem, and they're building an on-chain physics engine.
Mm-hmm.
So like they can do ballistic calculations or like collision detection, things that are totally impossible, or that would cost an enormous amount of gas on
right.
Ethereum.
So it's like next level computational kind of.
Because not all the nodes have to validate it. They're just, you can send it to one computer, on the side of the chain, that it will be super powerful, does it in a second, and just then offset the proof is then sent and packaged and blah blah blah, verified.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to look into this more. This is cool. So where does L3 come in here? Is this L3?
So this is L2, but then if we keep on going towards this way of thinking, that we're bringing like a layer 2 on top of layer 1 in order to accelerate to boost computation and accelerate speed, and then we just push these packages of data the same way that Arbitrum does as well with the package of transactions. It pushes them to layer 1. We can also now build layer 3s on top of layer 2s, which could be much smaller subnets, or like basically you and I, we build our own game. We build Arcane, and Arcane is using it has its own validation network, right, between the players.
Right.
We could validate within our network with everybody checking that we're being faithful actors, and then we would push that to layer 2, which would then be pushed to layer 1. So it's this cascade of layers that in the future, if they work well together, can give us like an immense power of scalability. Right.
I agree with you there. It's almost as if, right, you go into Arcane and you start your session, and that's the beginning of your transaction on this L3. Yes. And then when you're done with your session, whatever you did in there, whether it was do a bunch of quests, maybe you crafted some stuff, interacted with some others, when you're done with all that, then the transaction closes. Almost kind of like the idea of, I might be wrong here, but when they were talking about Lightning Network, but really kind of like, I don't want to say off chain, but the same idea where everything happens in one transaction. It's just this transaction is open for the duration of whatever you're doing.
I mean, it's more that you would have like a very small network that's very efficient, that would take care of all the transactions in a super fast way with zero fees. And then they will get if we all play Arcane, all of our transactions get bundled up, sent, verified, whatever, and then sent to L2. And then in the world of L2, then it would get pushed to L1, etc. But for your point of keeping things open, first of all, I should say a little parenthesis here that on Starknet, they invented their own language to program it. It's called Cairo. They use their own language, their own framework, and this is like the difficulty of Starknet. Starknet is not an easy chain to get into. It's not. It's not like Solidity. Solidity is really like ridiculous next to it, and because it's very young. The tooling is very bad, so for devs it's difficult. It's like a small mountain to cross in the beginning. Mm-hmm. It has its own. It's very different, and you don't get it in 1 week like you could learn Solidity in 1 week. Anyways, but there are some very interesting things that people can do on Starknet that we cannot do on the EVM, and a lot of it has to do, and for now, outside of the computational power, which is obviously amazing, it has to do with the account. On Starknet, we can do what we call the account abstraction. And it's something that people have wanting to do like for a long time on Ethereum, but it's not possible. On Ethereum, you have your address, your address is your account. It's just like that public key, private key combo. On Starknet, you program your own account. You can program accounts in a way, and they're the ones who are moving the funds around. Like basically, they're never interacting with it's not your public private key that holds all your fund. It's the account itself. So you just sign messages, and your account does the job. What that means is that you can have you can program all kinds of accounts. We could have like an account. I could program now like an account for like you, me, and another guy, and would put all of our sets of rules inside of how everything is managed. So you could have a guild that builds its own personalized systems, right? How to interact with everything.
This is making my mind go in all sorts of different directions, because I'm kind of grasping what you're saying, but at the same time, like it's still like a little complex for me to understand.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it takes time even for me in the beginning to wrap my head around it, but you'll get there if you get into it, you know.
Right. But at the same time, I think that these types of evolutions are absolutely necessary or just natural almost. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's natural, because I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to have a lot of this automated rule set type of wallet interactions where our money is literally working for us in the background overnight, all day long kind of thing.
And you could program it so certain type of transactions you need to sign for, others you don't, right? And you were telling me 10 minutes ago about how it would be cool, you know, to not have to sign for 1 million transaction. Well, there's exactly this happening now. They built some contract in a hackathon the other day where actually it's like a time-based wallet. You connect to the game and that you want to play. Let's say you want to play Arcane. And basically you can set it that for an hour, it's not going to ask you to sign transactions. So you don't have like the pop-up that, you know, every time you pick up an item, it pops up.
So it's almost like you set a time frame and you set an amount, right? So I want to spend no more than X and I want to do it for 60 minutes. And
exactly.
Love it.
And that's a game changer in the interaction with the game, because it's really annoying. I mean, if you're playing Arcane, it's fine because it's kind of like that slow pace RPG where you're trying to get some NFTs, you want to sell some stuff, you want to expand your character. But if you're playing like, I don't know, a shooter, like a crypto shooter, if that exists, you don't want to be having a transaction that pops up every 10 seconds when you kill somebody to validate.
Right. Otherwise, you're dead in that time. You gotta sign
you take out your ledger, you know, you try to.
You're with your party. Hey guys, hold on, I gotta
validate.
Oh, that's funny. Wow, we've been talking for quite a bit of time, Myst.
Yeah,
I
sorry.
really
No.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine. No need to apologize. This has been really great. I've really enjoyed this.
I'll finish on just a last little note for the ones who managed to stay with us until the end. But something that I haven't talked about yet to anybody, but there's a Stargate channel inside the Discord that nobody understands what is there, but it's actually because I'm developing on Starknet a couple of days per week an expansion for Arcane, and actually Arcane is going to exist there as well. And everybody who has a wizard on Arbitrum is going to be able to teleport over there and embark on new journeys.
Interesting. Well, I'm really interested to see where that goes. Hopefully it brings magic along with it.
I hope.
But no, this was really good, really enjoyable. What I enjoy most about doing what I do, which is talking to you guys, you developers and builders, is every time I speak with, whether it's you or Garp or any of the other builders in the space, I get new ideas presented to me or tipped off to things that I hadn't heard about yet. And I really enjoy that, because that's what really drew me into Web3 in the first place.
That's what's so exciting about this space, right?
Right. Imagining things that haven't ever been imagined before.
Never a dull day in crypto, as they say.
Oh yeah, exactly. But you have kind of opened my eyes to a number of things that I now need to do research on and want to learn more about. But I appreciate that, and thank you very much, Myst.
Well, thank you for having me. And on the other side, you make me like a point of contact with the community, and it's super important for me to not only to meet you guys and meet everybody in the community, because I get along so well with you guys, but also it helps me a lot because to put the word out there, because with everything that I'm doing on my own, the only thing that I have zero time to do is the marketing or putting the word out there. And it's difficult for me. So every time when you mentioned, Led, you want to go on the podcast and talk about the game, I was like, damn right. You know, I would love to do that, to meet you guys and tell you what Arcane is about. So yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the opportunity, and lovely to speak with you.
And that concludes another episode of Magic Hour, friends. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you can listen to your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magic Hour Pod. All the links are found on our link tree, which is in the show notes. From all of us, we appreciate your support for Bridge World.